Hello there. It's dark because it's the middle of the night. I'm sure you've read the title of this video. You're probably asking, you didn't actually do that, did you? I did. I folded 1,000 paper stars and I put them all in a jar and now they're sitting on my shelf. And I'm also pretty sure you're asking, why would you do that? Anyway, so let me show you how to fold a paper star. So these paper stars are actually made out of really long, really thin pieces of paper. Your first step that you're going to do is you're actually going to tie a knot in the paper. You want to be really careful here so that you don't rip your paper. But I don't know how else to describe it other than the end of your paper here, you're going to tie into a knot. After you have your knot, you're going to carefully tighten and flatten it. Again, you want to be really careful not to pull too hard because we don't want to rip the paper. But you're just going to gently pull and gently flatten the knot in the middle of your paper until it's folded over on itself and it's completely flat. At this point, we have a little bit extra hanging off this end of our little knot. We can do two different things with this. Something we can do is we can either tear or cut it off. This part isn't going to be used in the actual folding, so we can just get rid of it if we want to. If not, we can actually fold it up and into our design like this. Then when we move on to our next step, it'll naturally be folded into the star and we won't have to worry about it. If you're working with thinner paper, this might bulk up your design a little bit and make it easier to make it actually a star at the end. So our next step is taking this long end and slowly folding it over itself. When I fold the paper, I'm going to make sure that how I'm folding it matches the flat edge. Since we're working with a pentagon, every time you fold up on a flat surface, it'll create a diagonal line to a different flat surface. So it should always line up nicely with the next place you're going to fold. When it lines up with the next flat surface, you can just fold over that flat surface too. Since it always naturally lines up with the next place you're supposed to fold, it's pretty easy to just repeat the steps until you run out of your longer half of the paper. So when you're done folding end over end over end, you're going to be left with a little bit at the end. What we're going to do is we're going to pick up the last flap that we just put over and tuck the tail underneath. It's very similar to tying a knot like we did in our first step. Just this time we don't have to pull it as hard, we just gotta flatten it out. If you're lucky, sometimes the amount left on this tail will actually be small enough to be hidden underneath that flap and then you're done with the folding section. If not, after the tail has been tucked underneath the flap and there's still some hanging out, you can just rip it like we did at the beginning. Now that we just have this little pentagon made out of paper, we're going to pinch the sides and that's going to help us make our star shape. I use my nail to just kind of jam it into the flat part of the pentagon. And you have to be a little bit gentle when you're doing this and make sure that the middle is fluffing up, because a lot of times if you squish too hard in the middle while you're doing this, instead of fluffing up, it'll just kind of crinkle. You're going to repeat this for all of the sides and then you have a little star. So, it's no joke, I did 1,000 paper stars. They're all in here, and it's actually not as full as I thought it was gonna be. It's only like half full, so which means I could probably fit close to 2,000 stars in here. I'm not gonna do that, because this was too much work. And I can hear you asking, how do you know there's 1,000 paper stars in there? There's no way you counted the paper stars, especially since it took me, I'm pretty sure, 9 days to do this. And I'll tell you, I do know there's exactly 1,000 paper stars in there, and I'll show you how I know. I know I folded exactly 1,000 paper stars because I did math. First things first, I got 10 different colors of paper. This construction paper is from one of my dollar store art videos, and I wanted to take it and cut it down into strips so that I could make a bunch of different colored stars. It is pretty difficult to cut straight lines in a piece of paper though. So to make sure my strips of paper were as uniform as possible, I actually took the paper and folded it in half a few times so that I was having to cut a much smaller section of paper. In reality, I was still cutting the whole piece of paper, just this time it was in like 1 or 2 cuts instead of like 15 to 16. It was way easier for me to keep the scissors straighter and to cut properly, and it made my strips of paper way more uniform. Now, I'm also a collector of jars, as you can see in my background. Because of this, I had a lot of empty jars just sitting around. What I did is I got 10 jars out, and as I was cutting the paper, every group of 10 I would put in a jar. So I would cut 10 strips out of the paper, put it in a jar, cut 10 more, put it in a different jar, and then when all of those jars are full, that means I've cut 100 strips of paper. Now the cutting by itself, I think, took like a full day, but I'm not counting that one in the folding. If I did, it would be a nice even 10 days, but the folding itself took so long that I even forgot that the cutting happened. But after I finished with one color, I would have 100, then after I went through the next color, I had 200, so on and so forth, until I got to the yellow paper. Then I just could not fit them in the jars anymore. So I just moved all of my warm colors up to a very big jar, emptied out my little jars, and started over with our first green. But that meant I was halfway through and had 500 slips of paper. Obviously, I started up again with the green, went through the same process, cutting 100 slips out of each colored paper, and then put them in the jars to keep them separated so that I could keep count. And then when I was done with my last color, I knew I had 1,000 strips of paper. Because I had 10 jars with 10 different strips of paper for each of our 10 different colors, that equals 1,000, so I knew for sure I had 1,000 pieces of paper. And like I said, that process alone took me like a full day, and the folding of the paper is way more intricate. So at this point, I realized this was going to be like a really big task. Like I knew it was going to take a while, but goddamn. And like I can hear you asking, at this point, why didn't you just like not do this if you already knew it was going to be that big of a deal? So for day one, I took one of our jars and I just emptied it on the desk and started folding. I'm pretty sure I got through about 100 paper stars on day one because I emptied 2 jars. Since I had to empty the jars halfway through, there was only 50 slips of paper in there because we only had 5 different colors. And since I emptied 2 different jars, I think I did 100 that day. And I think it's also pretty safe to say that I did about 100 every single time I sat down to do this. And it took so long. I don't know what day we're on. 4? 5? I'm pretty sure we're on day 6. I've lost track of how many stars I've done. We're on day 8 at this point. Okay, it's day 9. And I think we're gonna finally just finish it today because I've got like the worst headache and not that many left. And I really just need this to be over with at this point. Folding 10 to 15 paper stars really is not that bad, but when you're folding 100 a day, or even sometimes more than that, you're literally just sitting for hours doing nothing but folding paper stars. It took a long time. Even when I would set aside chunks of my day just to do this, I don't have time to just sit there for hours and hours and hours on end to fold paper stars. I did get to the point where I had folded all my cool colors, so I was back to the big jar with my warm colors, and I lost track there since they were all grouped together. But I'm pretty sure it's safe to say my average was about 100 stars a day. I think my last day, I was so over it at that point, I was like, I'm not stopping until this is done. And I mean, I did. I finally got it done. I had a full jar worth of paper stars. The cool colors were on the bottom and the warm colors were on top, so I had to like give it a good shake to mix them all up so that it actually looks nice. And it looks like a bunch of fun colors all just in a jar. And I'm sure you're sitting there asking, was this worth it? Was there a point to that? You ask a lot of questions. Anyways, like I said before, I'm definitely not folding another 1,000 to fill up this jar, unless this video gets like a bunch of views, but probably not. What I think I will do with these paper stars is, since I am gonna quit my job and move on to a different job pretty soon, I'm gonna take these paper stars and use them in like gift boxes or like gift bags for people that I want to say goodbye to at work. I think these make really cute like little fillers, which is a little bit sad because it did take me fucking forever to do this and they're just gonna be used as filler and probably thrown away. But I do think it adds like a nice little touch. I also might use them as like the filler for one of these pins jars, like you know in the principal's office where they have like a cup full of beans and they put pins in it. Like I might do something like that. Something I will not be doing is folding more paper stars, and something else I will not be doing is throwing them away. I will find a use for them. I would say this video was fun to make, but I don't know if it was. I like folding paper stars, but not 1,000 of them. This took up like way more time than I was expecting, and also like I didn't have a fun time while it was happening. I couldn't do anything else. I had to sit there and fold paper stars. Like I could watch a YouTube video, but I couldn't be looking at the screen. I had to be looking down on what my hands were doing. So if I watched something, it had to be something that was mostly audio based or something I had already watched before. That being said, I won't lie, I do get a little bit of a sense of accomplishment when I look at that jar. It is a little bit disappointing that it's not more full. I think it would be more fulfilling if it was full. Nothing I can do about it now. I already did it. I hope you enjoyed this video of me wasting way too much fucking time and paper. If there's literally absolutely nothing else for you going on in your life right now and you're bored to tears, maybe try giving folding 1000 paper stars a try. But that's gonna be it for this video. I hope you all enjoyed watching, and I will see you all in the next one.